Hi, and welcome to A Time to Thrill. It's me, your host, Amy Austen. This month, I am delighted to speak with Grace Wynter. As you know, I was one of the recipients of the Mystery Writers of America 2025 Barbara Neely Scholarship. The Barbara Neely Scholarship honors a Black crime fiction writer, one for an already published author, which is me, and one for an author just getting started in publishing, which is Grace Wynter. That is their description, getting started in publishing. Well, we'll talk about it during the episode, but she's very active in the writing and publishing community, just not as a published writer of crime fiction. So, we talk about this during the episode, but I don't spend my time applying to awards and things. Although I did enter both the Golden Heart from RWA. I think the first time I entered was 2006 or 7. I remember because I was photocopying the entries at work, they were paper back then. And additionally, I did enter probably one of the Ritas, I think for a novel with strong romantic elements, maybe in 2014 or 15. That's about right. Other than those two, I generally don't enter writing contests. I have found, in my experience, both in contests and in life, that my writing can be polarizing. So the way these contests used to be judged was that you had to appeal to 3, 5, 7, 10, I don't know, a broad range of people, and I did not write and still do not write books that appeal to a broad range. People either love me, and people do love me, or they are not a fan. And I don't seem to have a lot of middle of the road readers. So that is what it is. I can't change that. Or maybe I could change it, but I'm not aiming or trying to. So one day, actually there's a whole, not a whole story behind it. I will keep it brief. I have a friend who is a writer, and we published around the same time our first published, traditionally published books. This is in romance for maybe, let's say 2012 or 2013. I'd have to really think about that a little bit more. But I remember, our first books were with large publisher, but at the time they had started an imprint, which was ebooks only. It was the thing to do at the moment because they could publish a lot of authors cheaply, even cheaper than pulp back in the day. And if they sold well, yay. If they didn't, it didn't matter because they spent very little on editing, very little on covers and marketing. I don't know if I was aware of all of this at the time, so what I'm telling you is information I have 10, 15 years later. But what was attractive back then was that they were first when most traditional publishers were still flogging paperback and hardcovers, and the readers, especially those in romance, erotica, anything that was even a little bit outside of the mainstream, were flocking to ebooks because they could get what they want and could read them fairly anonymously. The other thing that was attractive is that they offered royalties that were far greater than paper royalties. So back in the day, a lot of publishers paid 6%, which means the publisher kept 94% of the royalties. And you have to sell a lot of books to recoup that. And there were fewer books, and some books got more marketing back then than now. But I think I want to say the royalties for first back then were maybe 30%, 40%. I'd have to think about it. or look at those contracts. And so that was an order of magnitude, obviously, a greater percentage that was flowing to the author. So for some publishers, this worked out. Actually, for publishers that were primarily selling ebooks, I think those situations worked out better for many authors. In my case, it was a publisher who was primarily in print, and this was just a little thing they were trying. And for me, it didn't yield a lot of sales. All that said, oh my God, see, this is a long backstory. I should probably cut this. But all that said, that one of the things that we could not do as first authors, even though we were traditionally published by a large publisher, was that we could not enter into contests. So things like, well, whether it was RWA or Mystery Writers of America, or it doesn't matter, all of these organizations, at the time they did not accept first, even though we did have paperbacks that came subsequently. They did not accept those for contest entries. So things like the best first book, which is kind of a big deal, whether it's like the Edgars or the Ritas or any of that, we could not enter those contests. And for many years, we were barred from many traditional publishing accolades. I mean, even back then, like getting on the New York Times bestseller list with ebook was a whole thing before they started taking that into an account. So while we were published, I think many of us, or I'll speak for myself, felt marginalized. So all of those traditional publishing contests, awards, I never thought much about them because they were generally not available to me. What I think that's changed, not as much as you would think. It has changed to some small degree, but if you look at the winners of these kinds of contests, they are still majority traditional authors. I just looked at like the lookbook for some of the major awards this year, and some new ones are coming up. And a lot of them you have to be submitted by a publisher, and the publisher has to be on an approved list. I think that, well, I'm not going to guess on the Hugos. I don't know if that's true for them as well. But what that means is I don't think about these much. So one day I was on the Mystery Writers of America site because I'm thinking of pivoting from legal thrillers to psychological crime fiction. Or I've made the pivot maybe with His Last Mistress, and I think I'm going to further pivot going forward. That said, I was on the website looking at, I don't know what. Look, this is all procrastination from writing a book. And I noticed that they had the Barbara Neely Scholarship, and at the time, or from time to time, I think of like spending a lot of money on like a really great editor who will somehow take my books to the next level. This is maybe not a realistic thing, but it from time to time it passes through my head. It's sort of like from time to time people think about winning the lottery. There are a lot of things that pass through your head that are completely not realistic. And I looked at the contest and I was like, I can do this because the writing, well, since I was already published, I could submit writing that already existed. I didn't have to write anything new. So I entered in October of 2024. Honestly, didn't think about it again until I got an email that was like, you won the scholarship. And I'm going to be honest, I literally like paused, thought, this is not spam, but let me go see. And I have a folder where I have like random contest entries. I'm very organized, so over time. And I clicked on it, and indeed I had entered. So it was a surprise and an honor because it's the first time I think any group of people have agreed on my writing being good. So, I mean, other than readers, but they as a group are not like deciding except individually one by one with their pocketbooks. So it was interesting, and going forward, maybe I will do more of that. All that said, I really wanted to talk to the other person who won. And so I reached out, and Grace said yes. So, on this episode for June 2024, I will be just talking to Grace Wynter about reading, writing, entering contests, and what it's like to be a Black woman author in the world today. So, without further ado, the other 2025 Mystery Writers of America Barbara Neely Scholarship recipient, Grace Wynter. Hi, this is Amy Austen, and welcome to A Time to Thrill. This month, I have the delight of speaking with Grace Wynter. Hi.
Hello, Amy.
How are you?
I'm great, thank you.
So for the listeners, let me do an introduction. So Grace Wynter, I contacted out of the blue because I'm that person. So the two of us are the 2025 Barbara Neely Scholarship winners from the Mystery Writers of America. And I think at some point you must have gotten a joint email, because I don't think I stalked you like that.
Yeah. They emailed both of us on the same chain.
Yeah. Okay. And so then I was like, I wonder, I know who I am, but I wonder what it's like, who the other person is. So I thought I would bring her to you. So, hi, how are you? So I have like about 1,000 questions, but I guess the first one is, what made you apply for the scholarship? Because I'm going to tell you, it was just a whim one day for me. I was surfing the web and I was like, let me do this. Never did it before, may never do it again. So what possessed you to do it?
So I don't enter a lot of contests.
Neither do I. I literally enter 0.
I've entered a few though, and usually, disclaimer, I don't win. But last year, 2024, I was a runner-up for the Sisters in Crime Beverly Neely Award.
Mm-hmm.
And so I was like, okay. So I think I don't know how to put this, sort of figured out, what they're looking for in those, those starting pages.
Okay.
And so I got an email too. I don't know how I got it, and I was thinking about it. And then a friend, an author friend, forwarded the email to me and said, you should apply for this. And that's what sort of like, I'd been planning on doing it. But then when she sent the reminder email, I was like, yeah, I did say I was going to do that. And so I applied.
Okay. I have only 1,000 questions. Okay. Because I don't know if I'd ever, look, I sit at home and write all day, but writing all day involves like 45 minutes of writing and 8 hours of procrastination. So I believe I was surfing. Okay. So I started as a romance writer. Mm-hmm. And so every so often I surf the web for, now that I write crime, the other thing. So I think one day I was like, let me look at Sisters in Crime and let me look at like mystery writers and see what's going on. That literally is what I was thinking. Like, let me just like see what's going on. And I saw the scholarship. I'm sure it was probably due the next day. And I thought, oh, I'll just do that. With no thought behind it. You sound like you're a little more thoughtful. So okay. In terms of doing contests, because I've done maybe 4 in my life and I've won, 0 or this one. Are you looking for like writing validation or greater, I guess I'm not going to guess. What are you looking for?
Well, to be 2 things. One, it looks really good on your writing resume to even final in some of the more well-known contests. But like you, I think I can count the number of writing contests I've entered in my writing career on one hand. So it's not like it's something that I do a lot,
No, there are people I know who do it all the time. That's like their whole thing.
And I think that's a valid way. If you get, sometimes you get feedback most times you don't, right? But sometimes it's the idea of sort of winning that motivates you to write a piece or to work on a piece. So I get that. But I'm a full-time freelance editor
Mm-hmm.
who rarely has the time to write.
Okay.
And so I'm looking for like scholarship and financial assistance so that I can, one, maybe attend some workshops or,
Mm-hmm.
conferences, and two, maybe not take on as much of an editing load 1 month or, a couple weeks,
Oh, yeah,
so
that'd
I
be
can
great.
focus on writing. So if
Mm-hmm.
there's a scholarship that, one, it's is well known, the organization is well known, there's no fee to
Mm-hmm.
enter, and
Gotcha.
it can help me financially, like take a week off and work, then I'm like, okay, it's worth a shot. And then my friend who suggested it, she's a member of Mystery Writers. I have other writer friends who are members of Mystery Writers, so I know it's a really well established, well known organization. So yeah, those things all work together, and like, okay, just do it.
Okay, so I have questions because when I got the email, I had to go look in my folder to see what I had said and sent. Because I mean, who knows, life. What? Okay, is your primary genre, I guess, crime, or I think it was crime fiction, mysteries, crime, that kind of
Yeah,
thing?
that's a good question. So I've written one romance fiction that I self published like 6 years ago now. That was
Mm-hmm.
supposed to be a series, but life gets in the way, and I had to work. And but I read widely, and for the past few years, I've been laser focused on like mystery and thrillers. And so my work in progress, I'm actually on submission. That book is action thriller mystery sort of thing. So I've been like in that genre a lot, reading and writing and experimenting, and
Mm-hmm.
so for this one, I just had an idea of something I'd written before and I wanted to tweak it. And so that's how I ended up like finding something to submit to this one.
So is the work that you submitted, uh, I know what I submitted, but
Mhm.
it's a first chapter of a book, so I didn't have to write anything. But was it 5 pages or was it a certain number of words?
I want to say it was 5 pages.
That's
Yeah,
what I would say
if I
too.
remember correctly. Yeah.
Okay, so how did you decide what to submit?
I'm sorry. I'm sorry if there's some background noise. My window's open, but um, well, it was something I had been working on, and I really liked the protagonist. I thought it started right in the middle of the action, and um, showed who she was as a character. And so I tweaked it a little bit for mystery writers. I made it more present day. I
Mm-hmm.
changed the stakes a little bit, changed what she was doing. And when I finished it, I was like, oh, I really like this. I'm going to do something with this 5 pages once this is
Mm-hmm.
done. Whether I was awarded the scholarship or not, I was like, oh, this is something I really want to do something with. So yeah, so that's how I ended up choosing that topic. I think in the past, I realized something. In the past, when I'd submitted to competitions, I wasn't very, I think, deliberate in what I chose to submit. I just thought, well, the writing is good. I
Mm-hmm.
know it's good because I have critique partners and you know, I've worked really hard on craft, but I don't think I was, n- not everything that starts a novel well starts a competition well, because you only have 5 pages to wow them,
Oh,
you know?
yeah.
Yeah,
Yeah.
so I think that's what I learned between getting the runner up in the Beverly Neely and then,
Mm-hmm.
winning alongside you in this latest one, is
Mm-hmm.
that what you submit to a competition is different from what you submit to like from what the real story is or the start of a full length novel is. Not that they can't be the same, but
Mm-hmm.
I think with my writing, I tend to spend a little bit longer building into the action and momentum.
Yeah.
And I think for a
Yeah.
competition, they've got 5 pages. They're reading probably hundreds of entries, maybe dozens of entries. I don't know how many people submitted, but
Mm-hmm.
I feel like you got to catch them quickly. You've got to add some personality in there. You have to, for me, also add a little bit of humor, a little dark humor, because that's how I roll. And so I think I tried to make sure in these first 5 pages that all of that came through. And I think that's different from when, prior to 2024, when the few contests I've entered, I just was like, this is a really good story. And they'll see that within the first 5 pages, when that's not really always the case, or often the case.
Okay, that's really interesting because, okay, I feel bad because I didn't put this much thought into it. Well, no, I mean, it's literally, I've written a lot of books, and I like, my friend would kill me for saying this. I like some of them more than others. And I just submitted the best first chapter I think I've ever written.
Yeah.
And it happened to be that number of pages.
Yeah.
And that's it.
Yeah.
And it's not, I don't even know. Like now it doesn't even sound like it. I mean, the chapter, and I feel like I should have a trigger warning. It's basically a girl telling her mother that she was sexually abused by her stepfather. And that's it. Like that's all that happens.
But that's still like compelling and dramatic, and it's still, to me, potent. It still sounds really, just your description of it sounds really strong. So I think that's strong enough. And then also, I'm not as experienced writer as you are, like as far as what I've published and what I've been able to publish. And so the best thing you've ever written is probably better than the best thing I've written to date, as far as,
who knows? I wouldn't say all that.
Well, it's subjective, but you know what I mean, right? You've worked on this for a long time, and you're good at it, obviously, if you've made it this far with that many books. And so I just had to get to the point where that happened. And also, it also could be, the ones before just weren't as strong. It might not have been a pacing thing or whatever. Maybe it just wasn't as interesting, So these are just, this is my theory, because it worked this time for me. I'm like,
right. No, it's interesting because the only other concept I think I can enter, I think I can think of, and this is a different whole kettle of fish, is the Golden Heart or the Rita for RWA.
Yeah.
But back when they were called that, and back before the RWA's implosion, which is, a whole different era. And those, there's a lot of politics around those entries. But I hadn't thought, the things you're saying, I actually never thought about, because I was entering on a whim. Like, if I could win this, then I could sell this, or if I can win this, then I can have X.
Yeah.
And so I would generally, I know one book I submitted for the Golden Heart, which if I looked at today, not that great of a book, but the Rita one, I don't remember. Oh, I do remember, but for reasons, I don't think it would have gone over well.
Yeah.
With the judges, but I think what you're saying resonates so much, because in my head, I'm like, well, but if the whole story is good, then you'll figure that out from the beginning.
Yeah.
But I know commercially that is not true.
Yeah.
Like commercially, you have to start in a place that's compelling enough for the reader to get past the sample or whatever,
right.
Page 1, however they choose the book, or the first 5 audio minutes or whatever it is. So I know that now, but I didn't. What you're saying about contests, maybe that's also true for contests. That the thought never occurred to me. I'm going to be honest, like that thought never crossed my mind. Well, so that's interesting. I know people who entered a lot of contests. It's just a question of, I always wondered this, and I still wonder today, what do people get out of the win? Because there used to be, for the RWA, they used to call it the curse of the Golden Heart, where a lot of people did not get contracts despite winning or being nominated for that. And I know a lot of them.
Yeah.
I mean, ultimately they were successful, but that book itself did not propel them to wherever, stardom.
Yeah.
So I started to feel that people who were doing contest judging were looking for something different than either readers or editors.
Yeah. I mean, I also think that's true. I do think that's true too. And I think especially, there's a lot historically with RWA, and probably we won't go into in this podcast, but like, I know I've submitted things. I submitted one thing that with one group of with one group of judges. I found out afterwards that they thought my submission was the best, and there's no way. It was like a pre thing, and then they send it to the final judges. And then when it got to the final judges, and this was an RWA thing too, it like got a low, like one of them gave me such a low score. And I was like, wait a minute. How do I go from A+ to C-? Like, that kind of thing.
Yeah.
So absolutely. There's some judging stuff going on there too. And there's always...
I think a lot of people I know have had that similar experience.
Yeah.
So you're running strong, especially because they used to give the scores back, and it's like, so like 9 out of 10 give you like a 9 or a 10, and then, or I think it was 6. I don't remember the highest number. Yep. And then the one person who's like 0, and you're like, okay.
Exactly.
Okay. Yeah. And those issues came out, which is probably why it imploded. So that's its own issue. So what do you want to write and publish? Is your goal, and I'm asking from the future, is your goal to just be in crime or mysteries or cozies or thrillers or whatever, action thrillers, as you were saying, going forward?
No. My goal is to tell stories. And right now I'm in like my action thriller and mystery thriller mode. And as long as that's the mode I'm in, I'm gonna, like you see something, you're like, oh, because I consume a lot of streaming TV. And I watch those stories as a viewer, but also as a storyteller, right? And so a character might do something on TV and I'm like, oh, and I could have her do blah, blah, blah when I'm thinking about one of my stories. But then I'm also working on a magical realism story. And I'm also working on like book 2 for my romance thing. So I don't want to, I know that they tell us of course, for financial reasons, right? For sellability, you sort of have to pick a lane.
Stay in a lane. Stay in it.
I view my writing career, I think, differently than a lot of maybe authors and writers do. Maybe not a lot, but like because I see it as, so for example, you're talking about motivation for entering the contest and what this win means. I see all of this as part of the marketing we do for ourselves as storytellers, right? And so this is something, I can add to my resume. It's on my website. And then maybe it will get me into doors with people I wouldn't have been in the room with before, And so I see it as like, I see the business side of it. Like I see myself as a brand in a way. And so like, and I'm about to say this and I don't know all Coca-Cola's brands, but like there's Coke, right? The company, Coca-Cola, the company, and then they've got Coke and they've got Diet Coke, and then they've got whatever their orange drink is and whatever their ginger ale drink is.
Right. I know, actually don't know either, but yeah.
Right. But they're all under the Coca-Cola umbrella. So that's how I view my writing. There's Grace Wynter, and then I'll do mystery and thriller, and I'll do romance, and I'll do magical realism, and I'll do whatever else comes to me. And I'm not, you self-published, so you know this. I'm not the type of writer who thinks getting traditionally published validates a writer or makes them, quote, a real writer. Like I'm a hybrid. I want to be a hybrid author. And so I don't think I want to limit myself by one genre or, by saying, well, it's traditional publishing or nothing else, or So I write whatever I feel like writing. And fortunately, I have an agent who's very open to that. She's like, sure, let's see what we can do with this. So she's very open to that.
Okay, so let's go back. When you were younger, what did you read?
Everything, but what I remember, because I have a really bad, I have a bad memory, believe it or not, as an editor and a writer, but a lot of Judy Blume, a lot of Jane
Oh.
Austen.
Mm-hmm.
I grew up in a school district in New Jersey, which was predominantly white. So my library reflected that, right? And so
Mm-hmm.
those were the books I had access to. So that's what I read. And then it wasn't until around college that I started reading, like Toni Morrison and Jamaica Kincaid and like, Black women authors and
Yeah, I haven't thought about Jamaica Kincaid in years.
yeah,
Sorry. It's like, okay,
yeah.
yeah.
And even like I just consumed everything. It was when like I think it was Borders books, Barnes and Nobles, and you could. I was living in Jersey and going to New York all the time back then, and you could just go into a bookstore, find a comfortable chair,
Chair.
like all day. They wouldn't kick you out or anything, and so that's what
Mm-hmm.
I would do. So I consumed everything. I don't remember a lot of what, but I also read a lot of like Dean Koontz and Stephen
Mm-hmm.
King. Now I can't even my nerves, I can't do that anymore. I can't read those kind of books anymore. But
No,
yeah,
I don't have the stomach. I didn't have the
yeah,
stomach
no,
back then.
I
I
could
read
back
I
then.
read The
Yeah,
Shining, and I think that's it.
I could back then. These days, I can't. I'm too, I don't know, too much work. I'm too world weary now to read that kind of thing. But I consumed
Mm-hmm.
everything, everything. Yeah.
Is there anything that stuck out to you? Because so similarly, I read everything, but between the ages of, I'm trying to think. I remember where it was maybe like, I don't know, 12 to like, well, maybe 20. It was predominantly romance. So it would be, well, I would go to the library. So it would be like, I would go through other
Mhm.
phases. So it would be like romance. And then the other phase was historical fiction. I went
Mm,
through like a World War II
wow.
phase, God save us all. Or it would be romance and thrillers, or romance and women's
Mhm.
fiction set in New York where everybody died of cancer in the end.
Right,
That was the
right.
80s. You know
Yeah.
what I mean? So, I mean, so, but there were phases, but romance for maybe a
Hmm.
decade
Yeah.
predominated. And I don't know. Well, there was probably a couple of reasons. A, because access was easy and they were
Yeah.
cheap. So if you went to garage sales, tag sales, we
Yeah.
call them up there, you could, buy them by the
Hmm.
bag. And I had, well, a lot of time and a voracious
Yeah.
appetite. And me and the library were often on the outs because I had too many books and too many fines. So always, I mean, I had changed library cards. I had a whole scam running for that. But well, I was just gonna do. I lost my library card, and I
Library
was just getting new
scam,
ones.
that's funny.
I did. I was a library scam artist. It's not my
Oh,
best
that's
moment,
funny.
but I was like, how do I get the books? um, so I don't know if you could do that now, but you probably still could. So, and maybe they knew, and honestly, just were like, "Oh, girl, here you go." But so there was a thread that predominated over time. Did you have that, or was it, or did you go through phases? Like, I mean, there's phases. Well, my Stephen King phase was one book, and I was
Yeah.
like, I read Shining, and then people were like, "You want to read Carrie?" And I started that, and I was like, I don't think horror is for
Right.
me because I like to sleep at night. And I never got into fantasy.
Hmm.
It was just too
Yeah.
much. Like I wasn't interested in a whole another
Right.
world. So, but did you ever have like things that like really compelled you for like periods of
Oh
time?
yeah. So I went through the Dean Koontz phase, and of course, Dean Koontz has I don't know dozens of books. I don't know how many because I'm not.
Mm-hmm.
It's been
Yeah.
a while since I've been through his phase. But I think what happens with me is like if I read something and I love it, or I'm just get lost in the world, I start looking for more like that. Right. So that's what
Yeah.
happened with my Dean Koontz, and then but like you, romance was always because I always was like reading two or three books at a time. So I always had
Oh, still I
romance on
am.
the like sidelines. And I think that was because like especially in my 20s, I was looking for that in the
Mhm.
real world, right? And so I
Right.
just every book I could find with it, especially if the when the protagonist was a black woman, I was like, I'm in, and so they were always there, always by my side. And then um I think with the magical realism, we're talking more recent now in the last few years. I read a friend recommended The Invisible Life of Addie LaRue, and that's magical realism. And I read that and I was like, what? This is, and actually, some people would say it's not magical realism, it's more fabulism, and there's a long explanation about the difference. But I was like, this is what this is. So I started reading more books like that, and that inspired me to write, well, to begin working on my own magical realism story. And then now, the latest phase is my thriller phase and my mystery phase. And I read a lot of Karin Slaughter, but then Yasmine Angoe, she's a friend. She's got 3 books out. I've read her books. Then, of course, Beverly Neely. And then, so I'm in this mystery thing now, and I keep finding authors that I enjoy, especially Black women authors. And I'm like, this whole world exists that didn't when I was, growing up in New Jersey and didn't have access to
that is so true.
And so even Walter Mosley, like I didn't have access, or I shouldn't say I did. I'm sure that his books were available, but I wasn't around people who read him or be like, hey, if you like, and of course, when I was that age, I probably shouldn't have been reading older books anyway.
Wow. I read a lot of that
when I was older, that I was like, hey, and so I started reading everything, all of it.
Okay. Can I ask you about Karin Slaughter? So I went through a Karin Slaughter phase maybe, oh my God, if my son's 15, maybe like 20 years ago. And I think, okay, I'm going to say this as a person who has written about sex trafficking of children more than once. I don't know. I think I read 3 or 4 books back to back that involved children, like bad things happening. And I was like, I think I can't do this right now. Like it felt, and I do this with many authors, like I need to take a break in between because it's kind of intense. Or like I would listen to audiobooks in the car and I have to like turn it down because I'm like, I can't do this right now. Like not today. Do you find
no,
I know exactly do you find it intense?
It's exactly what you're talking about. And I have to do her stuff in stages. So like now I think part of the reason I'm so drawn to her books is I do a lot of my reading via audiobook. And the woman who, I can't remember her name right now, who does her Will Trent series is awesome. You forget it's a woman, you forget, she does every character so well, and you just get lost in it. So for me, it's almost like watching a movie or a series without the having to like experience the horribleness of it. But yeah, it is dark. Right. It's very dark. She deals a lot with how women and children are abused in society.
Yeah.
And so it's very heavy, and it's not like I went through her whole catalog in one sitting. I like listen to a couple or 2 or 3 and then take a break for a few months and then come back to it. And then, when she has a new one released, I would listen to it. And I usually can't do violent, bloody, like horrific, because she goes into detail about these things.
Yeah, that was the hard part. Yeah, for me.
And I usually can't do it. So I don't know if that's a testament to the audiobook narrator. I wish I could remember her name, but she's amazing. I don't know if that's a testament to her, or is it just, I like the way she builds her characters, and I'm so attached to her characters. I need to know what happens next between Will and Sarah. Like I want to know if they make it as a couple. I want to know, what barriers come up in their relationship. So I think that might be it too. Like the stories are hard, but like I'm committed to seeing the characters through, and that's what keeps me coming back. But yeah, that's a great point. Like I've done that with television shows. I used to watch Criminal Minds years ago, and one episode was just so dark. I thought, well, that's it for Criminal Minds. and I haven't watched that in years and years and years because it's too dark a show for me. So I think we all sort of have our limit. We hit that wall and you're like, okay, I've noped out. I can't do this anymore.
Yeah, I don't. Yeah, it's a struggle. It's a struggle, and I love
Yeah.
crime. But I think I love the implication of crime. Actually, now that I think about it, I think I like the justice part more
Yeah.
than the
Yeah.
crime part.
Me too.
Like you can have the
Yeah.
crime, like we understand crimes happen, but I want to know what happens. I want to know the
Right.
aftermath or what came
Yeah.
before. The middle part you can
Yeah,
like
because I do.
obscure.
I tend to skip through. Like even when I'm watching stuff, if there's like a fight scene, I'm like, okay, skip,
Mm-hmm.
skip, skip. I know their fight. I just want to know who won the fight, like a physical fight. Like I don't want to see the blows and the blood. I just want to know who
Mm-hmm.
won and what happens in the next
Mm-hmm.
scene. So I get it.
Actually, no, you're thinking now that you say this, then I think I know what it is I like about Law and Order because the crime is right at the beginning, and then the other
Yeah,
part of it is all just either the investigation or the trial, but not the
exactly.
crime
Yeah, yeah,
itself. And that's the part I would rather not know. But actually, when I was a criminal defense attorney, I was never there for the crime.
right. Yeah,
So, you know what I mean? Like I
yeah,
was never there. People only came to me after the fact. So, okay. In terms of okay, let me go back. How did you end up editing? Because look, I'm going to be honest, as a writer, it's not my strong
hmm
suit. I just looked at some book. I have a book club today, and I was looking at the first chapter, and I was like, oh, I should have done something different with the word oak tag in terms of like the folders. And I was like, oh well. I was like, did editor not think about the oak tag? And I was like, okay. Then I like had to walk away. But what? How do you do it? Like,
yeah,
it's not. Most writers I know struggle with
yeah.
editing.
Well, first of all, just because I've been reading
Mm,
so long, and I'm and like voraciously reading since I was a kid, there's certain things you learn, and we know this as readers, whether you know it or not, just about rhythm and cadence, and even if you don't know the technical terms for it, right? You know why.
mm-hmm,
This is what a sentence is supposed to be structured like, right? So that's the first thing.
mm-hmm,
I was good at that, and then when I put my foot into the fiction writing waters, I started a little meetup group. We're going to write romance. And like only one person came, one of my friends.
okay,
She's now a good friend.
mm-hmm,
And, but then it grew. So there were like 5 or 6 of us. And you critique pages and give feedback. And then we had a guy come to the group,
yep,
and people would say, "Oh, you give really good critique. You give really good feedback." And then I was at a job, but it didn't like me, and they were coming toward layoffs. And my background is marketing, and so marketing is
mm-hmm.
the first to go when companies are laying off.
It's true.
And
Yeah.
so when that writing was on the wall, I enrolled in the University of Chicago's editing certificate program,
Mm-hmm.
and did the coursework. And so like I finished that program like maybe in March, and then in May or June I was laid off. And I said, you know what, this is the last time somebody's going to lay me off. So a couple of my writing friends had been hiring me to edit work for them. And I'm like, well, I'm going to just take the plunge. I've always wanted to be self-employed. And so I did that. And so it was a struggle for the first 3 years. I mean, I'm 7 years in, and it's still not easy. Freelancing is never easy, but um, to me, it's been worth it. And I've been able to grow my career through like working with organizations like Atlanta Writers Club. And I used to do something with Tessera, a organization called Tessera. And
Mm-hmm.
so it's built my client base, and now I work with like trad 5 people. So I really I remember being a kid and realizing that people like read books for a living, and I was like, how? Like, how do you get that
This
job?
is
I
so.
didn't know the name for the job. Again, I wasn't in a
Mm-hmm.
universe where the people around me. This was, these my people are like bread and butter people. We get up, we go to work. It's tangible work. It's not like reading for a living. So,
Mm-hmm.
um,
Right.
so yeah, that all sort of came together. And as you said, you said something at the beginning of the conversation, or you mentioned something about sticking with stuff, right? Even when people fall away, you stick with it. And there were many times when I was like, should I just go try to get another job or whatever? But then, I was like, I get up every morning. I'm like, I read books for a living. Like 8-year-old me did not ever think that's a world that I could live in, I could occupy. So even though it's a struggle still, and it can be difficult, I still, like that 8-year-old girl, she's very happy. So that's how I ended up doing
That's
it.
so.
Yeah.
No, what you said, it really resonates, because sometimes people ask me about writing and I go, my 10-year-old self is thrilled. Like, if you told my 10-year-old self that I wrote books, I think I would just have passed out. It'd have been like, what happened? Like, how did that happen? Then they would tell me my age, and then I would have double passed out. So, yeah, but that's true. As a kid, I thought about that, actually. Like, I thought about, like, what about, like, reading for a living? But I didn't think, and I know when I was in college, there were a number of people. I went to a women's college, so a lot of people went to New York. Well, they did two things. Either went into finance or they went into editing. And this is at the days before ebooks and all that. So a lot of people went to work for traditional editors or agents, or that sort of milieu where you bounce back and forth, because they wanted to read books for a living. I don't actually know anybody who still has those jobs, but who started from that era. But a lot of people did have that. I did not have the guts to do it back then. And I don't know, in a different world, I don't know, but I didn't have the guts to do it because it seemed, I knew about those jobs because I was from New York City, so there's a lot of editor sort of people out there, but I didn't think it was for me. I think, to be honest, or it was going to be stable enough, because a lot of people, and this is before all the purchases and layoffs and consolidation. But even then, it seemed a little tenuous to be sitting in an office with a lot of dusty papers, hoping that you found the thing, or that you had the famous client or famous author. But so when you went into freelance editing, did you have a specific goal? Because I know a lot of freelance editors, and I actually know authors who edit. I just, actually, I've never talked to them about editing, but did you think, like, I want to edit, I want these kinds of clients, or I want to work for this kind of publisher, I want to freelance for this kind of thing? Because I know people who do that. Like, they're like, I'm going to only freelance for Amazon publishing, which, didn't exist before, but obviously exists now. Or people who were Big Five editors who did get laid off, who now freelance. I just was talking to somebody about one of those. So there's a whole different groups of people who sort of plug into different things, or I'm only going to, I've met one of these. I only edit indie romance. Yeah. Okay. You know what I mean? Like, there are people who are very specific. Did you have, like, those kinds of specific goals in mind when you started the
Not
freelancing?
Really. My goal was to make living, right?
Okay.
To make a living. And because, though, I started as a self-published author, like, I wanted that also to be my first, the bulk of my clientele, because I wanted, we can get editing done just as well as anybody else. So, like, my self-published clients now, they can tell people, oh, my editor works for Big Five publishers. Amazon is one of my clients. Right. Like, and so I wanted to give indie authors that, because I am that myself. But you also, to me, this is my opinion, you do need traditional publishing clients and small house clients, because that one just broadens your catalog, right, of books you've worked on and authors you've worked with. But also, a lot of self-published authors want to see that you have trad pub editing experience. It legitimizes you, and so
that's interesting.
If you can, and not that people who edit for trad pub don't make mistakes, but, like, if you're hired by trad pub traditional publishers, then chances are you know enough that you can edit my
Right.
book, which is, this is what the authors are saying, which is as important to me as any trad pub book is to a traditionally
Right.
acquired author. And so like it just helps diversify your client. I see my editing the same way as I see my writing. I'm not gonna, getting laid off taught me this. My income is never going to come from one source ever again. So
Yeah.
it's
Well,
going to be
yeah.
a mix of traditionally published authors, self-published authors, and traditional publishers as far as the editing, and the writing. It's going to be different genres. It might be small indie houses. It might be trad pub, whenever I get picked up. So I'm always looking to mix things up and to make sure that I'm able to make a living by myself.
Okay, so can I ask you? Well,
Mm-hmm.
I'm going to preface this. Years ago, and now I'm going to have to look it up because it's like it's vague. Some years ago, there was an article. I'm trying to think where it was, where they interviewed traditional people who were employed by traditional publishers and asking them how many books they edited a year. And I want to say it was like 5 or 10 in a whole year. And we were like, what? And because most editors we know were editing, I don't know, maybe a book a week or like every 2 weeks or something like that. And it was interesting because we had so many questions as to what that workload was about, what they were doing. I need to find that article.
Were these acquisitions editors at publishing houses? Because
yes.
so much of their job though is not just the actual editing. Yeah.
Right. The marketing and all of that. But the way they were selling themselves to writers, this must have been at a conference, is that, I've seen it all. And like, I have that eye to make your book the best it is. Cause that's always the sell for authors. Like, and look, this is still to this day, like one of these things I really want. So I will say this: when I applied for the scholarship, they asked what you wanted the money for. And at the time, and this comes and goes, it's a feeling that comes and goes, is that what I'm looking for is that like perfect editor who gets me and therefore can make my book the best it is. Because that has not been, I'm like 29 books in, that has not been my experience. Even like acquiring, even my traditionally acquired book. You know what I mean? Like the first editor of the first book acquired it and presumably liked it. Then she rolled out the door 15 seconds later. And then the second book was read by an editor who had not acquired it and wasn't thrilled. And that's fine. Like I get it now. And then the third book, the editor I thought she liked it, and then she wanted to change everything. And I'm not saying that's bad or good. Like in retrospect, actually, I don't think the changes were beneficial, and I still, okay, we're not getting into my feelings about those. Because I just, all the feelings just came right on back.
Get that.
But that said, I think, okay, many of the authors I know, because we're older, have this sort of fantasy from like that whole like, and this may not even have ever existed, but there's a couple of sort of famous, legendary like New York editors who worked with authors, and these are all men, the editors and the authors, over time, and that relationship became such that the books that came out later, the first book is not necessarily the best one ever, became so much better because they had that feedback and that growth. But nobody, I know one author and, who has that, and they go skiing together or whatever. But other than her, most people I know have had, and this is like the year we came up in, like the, the early 2000s, have had that turnover effect where like one person acquires you and then the next person edits and the next person edits. And you don't get either people who love your book or people who are committed to your growth.
Yeah.
And that has been, that's hard. Yeah. That's hard. Even as an indie, I've not had that. I'm always out looking for somebody who loves the books. And people like, so I have editors and it's fine, but there's I've never had that feedback where I love this. Let's make this the best thing ever. So I did put in the scholarship. I wanted that. And to be honest, at the time I found an editor and she hated it. She hated my last book. She was like, yeah, I don't understand what you're doing here. And I thought,
Wow.
okay, I guess not you. Not going to spend my
Right, right.
$1,800 on you. And I guess it was great. I mean, I did the sample edit. I didn't used to do that always, but now I know she doesn't like me either. So do you think that you can have that experience, or are you, well, I guess you would know, have you had that experience where you and a writer, I don't want to say
Yeah,
grow together, I don't want to make it sound like, you're like, but have had the experience where you can see their growth and the
absolutely.
feedback like moves
It
forward to make them a better
it's
writer and
my
the book's
favorite
better?
part about working with self-published authors and indie
Mm-hmm.
authors, um, because even when you work, because I've worked on multiple books with traditionally published authors that come to me through their developmental editors, even some that have come through their
Mm-hmm.
agents, and
Mm-hmm.
I we talk on the phone and help shape the story, but the acquisitions editor and the author are really the ones who have the vision for the story, right? And what they will do is
Mm-hmm.
share that vision with me, and then I will help, if it's a developmental edit, bring them closer to that
Right.
vision, right? And then on the line edit
Mm-hmm.
round, it's the making sure that the cadence and the rhythm fit the author's voice. So that's a different thing. But
Right.
with my
Mm-hmm.
indie clients, I had a indie author, Alessandra. I try to say it like that because she's Italian. She found me
Mm-hmm.
on the internet of all places, and I did a sample edit from her. For her. She lives in Italy. You wouldn't know English wasn't her first language, but that's how good she was. And we ended
Mm-hmm.
up working. We did our first book as a test. Um, we
Mm-hmm.
ended up working on 6 books together over 3 years. I think it's altogether it was 3 years. She wrote fantasy,
Mm-hmm.
and so each book was 110, 120,000 words. And I saw her because
Yep.
I one of the things I do is I do like I group services together. So especially if it's a first time author, I'll do an assessment in the first round, and then we figure out what the second round of editing should be. So I'm very in my first round
Mm-hmm.
letter, I talk about voice and what their goals are and what they want people to see in the characters, and then we have Zoom sessions and really try to get to know the author and the characters. And then so
Mm-hmm.
from her doing that first book, taking the feedback, and then when she sent me the draft of the second uh, book two, I was just like, oh my gosh, she listened. Like she understood. I mean, not that most people don't listen, but like she really
Right.
like understood and tweaked things, and you could tell like, and each book just got better and better and better. And so that's my favorite thing. And I have a younger author I'm working with now who's going to be querying soon. And we've worked on 2 books together. And she gets it. Like she's one of the ones who she writes a lot. She's wordy. She writes romance. She's wordy. And I'm
Mm-hmm.
like, honey, we got to cut 20,000 words. And she's like, oh my gosh, but she'll do it. Like
The
she
babies.
really
The
does work on
babies.
it because she believes me and trusts me. And this is where I was talking about when you have traditional publishing experience, and I say, look, I know this is what acquisitions editors are looking for, or I know they're going to say, your debut, there's no way we're going to bring on a romance at 120,000 words, right? Like when I
That's
say
true.
things like
I
that,
know.
people tend to listen because I've got the traditional publishing experience. And so, and she's a great writer. Like one of the other things that I've found, because I work on do so much traditional work now, is a lot of self-published, a lot of querying writers can really write. Like their writing is as good, sometimes better than some of the
Mm-hmm.
already acquired work I work on. But this business is so much
Mm-hmm.
about discoverability and timing and what people are
Yeah.
looking
Yeah.
for. and then the and air quotes can't relate thing that a lot of us get sometimes. And it's like, what? Like, and so it's also, the editing has also put me in a good position as a writer to accept rejection and to understand and embrace rejection. As a matter of fact, I'm writing about it for my newsletter tomorrow about how I view rejection so much so differently now than I did when I first started writing, and that first romance writing group, when people would come back with feedback, my first instinct was to be like, you just don't see the vision. You just don't see it. You
Yes.
just don't get it. Like, I don't
Yeah.
understand. And I see feedback very different now, but I also see clearly that making it in publishing, I'm talking about the traditional side now, is not about the quality of somebody's writing. It's not about the story. It's about timing. Sometimes it's about luck. Sometimes it's about connections. And I mean, when I say it's not about the quality of story, of course you've got to have a good story, right? But they will work if they like your premise and they can see themselves in your story. Publishers will work with you to get that story to the place they want it to be. And so I just see rejection a lot different. Like, I take it that it's par for the course now, and I don't see it as a rejection of me or my writing. I just see it as, okay, this is not a fit for them. They can't see my vision. And so it wouldn't work there anyway. It wouldn't have been, this is not my home. This is not where I should be. I should move,
Right.
To the next one. And so, yeah, they all feed from one another. And it's interesting. I'm the type of person, which is probably why I write so slowly, why I do so many things so slowly. Like, I like knowing how the sausage is made. Like, I like to know what goes behind things. So even when I started writing and my friend suggested, oh, you should edit for a living. And one of them was like, you should probably, I mean, it's not cheap, but you should get this editing certificate so you really know the technical stuff. And I'm like, you're right. I do want to understand how this works. And then when I met my agent, which is a long story how we actually met, and I wanted to sort of intern for her, but we call it an old turnship.
Okay.
Because I want to learn how this works. I want to learn how this process works. And so working with her has helped me see how that part of it works. And then working with the acquisitions editors have helped me see how that part of the equation works. And so I like knowing what's going on behind the scenes with stuff, how the sausage is made. And I think that's helping me sort of set myself up for when the doors do open, because I have to believe they will one day, that I'm prepared for it,
Okay, but I have two questions because how are you not cynical? Because I've had this conversation. I mean, writers in a room, we've had this conversation, and especially when some books become popular and you read it and you go, oh my God. Okay, so how do you not become cynical? Because then, and this ties into my second question, because then it's fundamentally a product. It's like, I was listening to a podcast yesterday. They were talking about Tiger King, which I know was popular on Netflix during the pandemic. I did not see it. I struggle with anything that may lean toward animal abuse, and I just couldn't open my doors to any potential of that. So, so that became popular, and a lot of people suggest that because everybody was home and everybody watched the thing, and it remains one of the top Netflix, the problem with streaming is that people see it all at different times. And when I was growing up, you could watch like The Cosby Show or Love Boat or whatever, all at the same time. But it was one of the few times where they were saying 30 million people all watched it within a week. And I thought, wow, okay, that's, ABC wish they had those numbers now. But I don't know, and I didn't see Tiger King, so I actually don't know. but the way people talk about it is that if it had come out in March and we had not had a pandemic, it may not
Right.
have
Yeah.
been the thing
Yeah.
people were watching. And that is also
Yeah.
true with books. Like if, and it's so either, and
Yeah.
it's like lightning sometimes. You don't know why or why it struck. And then, of course, there's always the rush to
Right.
copy it, which is a different thing. It's like, it's all
Woo.
going to be
Right.
dystopian. It's all going to be vampires or it's
Right.
all going to be whatever. So given that you know that, how do you keep that like cynicism at bay? Because what you're talking about, you are talking about how the sausage is made, and we all pretend in maybe in the US generally, like there's a veneer of it's a meritocracy, and if you're just good enough, then one day you will get your gold. But that's not. I mean, I live in LA, and I know a lot of TV people. That ain't true.
Yeah.
So it's not true. Okay, so that's, but people are trying to create art and would like to sell it. So that's one. But on the other hand, I will say this. Most of the indie authors I know, actually this just happened with an author. I didn't know her background and now I know why she's successful. Most of the authors I know who were very successful were people who left marketing beforehand.
Yeah.
So given those two things, do you not think, okay, A, how do you continue to write when you know that it's not quality first? It could be like, it's like, I call it zeitgeist first. It's anything other, it can be anything other than that. It's not that doesn't come into play, but it could be anything other than that first. And how do you put yourself in I don't want to say competition, but like, how are you submitting when you know that you're submitting based on your writing, but it may not be based, you're not rejected or accepted based on your writing.
Okay, so the first answer is, who says I'm not cynical? Like, no, I think so. I don't know like the textbook definition of cynical, right? So maybe I'm not quite cynical. Maybe I call it more like I'm more of a realist. Okay. And so that says to me, this is the game we're all playing, right? This is the hand I've been dealt. And I got to figure out how to succeed in this game, knowing what the other players, what hands that they've been dealt. Because that's the thing about, now that I know what hand they've been dealt, right? So that, to me, I see that as an advantage.
Yes.
I'm not going in there, and you have that advantage too, because you've been in this game long enough. Like, we're not going in there like the new authors who see something and think, oh, I'm going to write this great book and I'm going to get an agent and I'm going to get this 6-figure deal. And like, we know that's not how this business works. So I think that's it's a cliche that knowledge is power, but I do think that's powerful, knowing what you're up against. And if you know what you're up against and you're still committed to, if you know what you're up against and you're still willing to do it, then I guess that's where that cuts my cynicism, right? Because I know all of this, but I still want to tell stories. And the thing about is, the reason I want to tell stories is because, just like you and I both talked about what I said when I was 8 years old in Jersey and I couldn't find books about me on the shelf. There were no books by the authors that I know had written them. Now that I, as an adult, I knew they'd written them, but nobody put them on the shelf. So I'm writing for that girl, right? And who still exists, right? They still live in places where they don't have access to books, and there's no, nothing is reflected that looks like them, right? And so that, I think that keeps my cynicism at bay, but maybe it doesn't. And maybe I use a cynicism as fuel, right? Because my philosophy is, well, if they're not gonna give me, sorry to use this cliche, give me a seat at the table, how can I build my own table? Like, I'm going to try to figure out how I'm going to get in there, like, and reshape the way things are done. And so, we're on sub and I've gotten some rejections and people are looking, but there's two things a couple things I'm confident in. One, I know it's a good book. I know the writing is good. I got a rejection the other day where she said, what did the acquisitions editor say? She said, my writing was phenomenal. But
Okay,
right?
love that.
But
But
so there's a
here's the
but. So,
but.
and what I took from that was like, okay, so my writing is so I've been, another person co-signed that the writing is good, right? And so that's all I need, because even though this industry is about marketing and connections and what a handful of gatekeepers say they want and don't want, when it gets into the reader's hand, it's about the story, right? So once we
That's
know
true.
we
That's
have
true.
that, right? Like once we know we can tell that story, then all the other stuff, it's just people in my way, right? It's people in my way preventing me from getting to the reader. So part of my like whole philosophy is, yeah, I talked about having multiple, I don't think I used the language multiple streams, but like
Right.
part of
Yeah.
my philosophy is then, okay, so I'm gonna try this route. Like, so we're still on sub, and then my agent is connected with some Hollywood stuff, so she's doing some things in that angle too. But then I'll also have a network of authors that I know that are smart, that have marketing savvy, that we're talking and figuring out how we can do things a certain way. And if that doesn't work, I'm still working on D and E and F. So
Right.
I guess part of the thing that keeps the cynicism at bay is that I've never put all my books in their basket. Like I almost don't expect them to
I
do the
like that.
right thing. I'm just doing it. Let me just give them a shot. Let me just see,
Right.
if they can grasp this vision. But then half of, probably the majority of me doesn't think they will, especially my book. The book I have on submission right now is sort of anti-oligarch, anti-wealthy, revolutionary nonfiction YA. It was dystopian when I started writing it, but it's reality. It's more like reality now. And so, like,
Oh
I've talked
God.
to
Yeah.
we've had these conversations, and I'm like, hey, nobody's going to pick this up right now. It's just too, it looks like I wrote it in response to what's happening. I started writing it 7 years ago, right? So, but she's like, nope, you worked hard. We deserve this. I'm going to get somebody to do this. I'm like, okay, well, you keep working that route, and I'm going to work all my other angles, because the key is discovery. We just have to find a way to get the readers to
Right.
discover us. And I feel like I'm one of these. I am a realist, sometimes cynical, but I guess there's a part of me that's also very, I wouldn't say optimist. Like, yeah,
Maybe
there's a part of me
hopeful. Oh,
that
yeah.
feels like if you're given a vision, it's not for nothing. Like, if there must be a way to get it to come through, come true. So I feel like I'm going to figure out this discovery thing, with or without publishing, with or without Hollywood. Like, I'm going to find a way to crack this discovery thing and build my own table and bring my people with me. And, because every industry has like their upheaval time, right? And we're seeing a lot of that
Yeah.
now with AI doing a lot of stuff. People are losing jobs, and I know a lot of self-published authors
Oh.
are actually using AI to write. Like, there's a bunch of stuff going on that's probably a whole different podcast you want to do. But like, so stuff is there's upheaval going on. And if we just can figure out how to work around that, and again, get the blocks out of the way so we can go straight to our reader, then I think we'll have it figured out. So I don't know if I answered your question, but yeah.
Well, no. So the second question was about marketing. So there's an author who is, I'm not going to get in. This is public,
Yeah.
but I don't want to get into this conversation about this specific person. But she wrote a book, let's say 6 years ago. I mean, I don't know when she wrote it. I know when it was published. And her goal, she was in marketing. And she knew that if she could just find a publisher, she could market it herself. So she did find a very small publisher, and she marketed herself, and she's doing extremely well, and just had a new book come out. And the publisher
Yeah.
She's the only breakout person, but she's doing it herself. And she knew or had that faith about herself from the beginning. And a lot of the early indie authors I know had a similar, they left marketing at pickyourleak.com or whatever. And they knew that they could pull the levers sufficiently to do that if they had the right platform, whether that's indie, whether it's trad, whatever that platform is. Do you have that faith in yourself? Because I never did marketing, and to my ever probably regret. I remember people when I started school, marketing was not a thing. It was sort of nascent in the terms of like schools teaching it. And I remember I went to a school that did not have it, but because I went to a very traditional school. But there were people who, I have friends who in college, obviously at other schools, and they were like, I'm doing marketing and business. And I was like, I don't even understand what you're doing. Like, I'm over here. I'm going to do some English and Latin and classics. And that I understand. And you do you. But at the end of the day, and I remember like a 7th grade teacher saying to me, you have to sell yourself. And I was like, that's not the world I live in. Okay. So many things I regret being very stubborn about. And it's only come to, I understand this now, especially meeting writers who were marketers previously. They have that ability, if the platform is right, to push that book to a level where people who don't have that background can. Do you have that sort of faith in yourself, since you understand, I understand like zero about marketing, no matter how many books I read. Do you feel that you have that lever to pull should you get the right platform?
Well, I mean, I know I have the skills and the knowledge to put stuff together that looks great. So, for example, I did a trailer to send out with my manuscript on submission, like a 2-minute book trailer. And it went over really well. Like people enjoy. So I know I can create the stuff that gets people interested. What I don't know these days, because so much of this requires social media, is I don't know if I can get the audience. Like I don't know if I don't know if I build it, they will come. Like I haven't figured out that part yet, getting them to come. Like I know how to build it, but I don't know if I believe if you build it, they will come. Because so much about it is still also luck. It's about what platforms you're on. I'm not on TikTok. I'm no longer on Instagram or Twitter. Like, so it's just me and BlueSky. And so, so I don't know. But what I try to do is do the work and not worry about like not worry about the things I can't control until I absolutely have to. So like I'm building the platforms. I'm making the connections. I'm teaching people and talking to people, and everybody I know knows I'm a writer. And I talk about my writing process and talk about my books and what I'm working on, and people are interested. And I've launched my newsletter. Like I'm doing the things that I know I need to do with the hope and hopefully not false expectation that one day it's going to come together and my platform will meet the audience and things will do what they're supposed to do. But yeah, marketing absolutely is a piece that every author should at least understand the basics of. And I have an MBA in marketing, and for years, even when I was working in marketing and business, I was like, well, shoot, that degree is not helping me do anything. Like, they train you when you're on the job. You have to learn things that, I just didn't see how it was helping me work. And it wasn't till I started writing, till I started doing a lot of the editing stuff. And like, I've taken over a consortium of editors that I used to be a co-managing editor of. And it's now that I'm doing this work that I realize, oh, so I did learn a lot in school and I am applying it. Like, and this is what this looks like when you apply it to your own business and your own. So I do like just like I took I'm not saying everybody should take 2 years of editing courses or business courses, but I do think learning the fundamentals of marketing is something every author, every writer should do. Even if you choose not to do certain things, like I'm not getting on TikTok, I'm not going back on Twitter, but at least you understand what the benefits would be of doing these kind of things, why social media is important. And again, it's about, back to the same analogy about there are things blocking you from getting to your reader. Before Twitter, before social media, people were still reaching their readers. Like, right? People are
That's
still
true.
doing it now. I'm in Atlanta. I was driving down one of the highways and I saw a billboard of a author who writes urban fiction. I never heard of her. That's not a genre I read a lot, but still, she had a billboard up with a teaser about her book coming out. Right? I remember that, like I took a picture so I could go look her up when I got back home. So people remember people who used to sell purses out of their trunks. Like, yeah. So there are ways like, yes, we're all on social media now, and I don't think you can have a career without at least having some sort of platform online. But that's not the only way to do it. And long before social media, marketers, nonfiction writers are great people to learn this kind of stuff from, because they build their platforms like nobody else. But it's the same logic.
That's actually
it's the same
true.
thing.
Yeah.
Like nonfiction people are telling stories too, right? They out. This is what I say about marketing, and when it comes to authors, marketing is the story you tell about your story, right? And so that's what draws. When I was about to, when I started working on my self-published book, I was on Facebook at the time, and I would post about it like once a week, a couple times a week. Oh, this was a rough week with the writing, or this is why I wrote about my protagonist, and this is what she has in common with me. And those posts always got the most attention and likes, because people want to hear about the story behind the story. And so when I launched, I had a few reviews the first day. I had a bunch of purchases the first day because people wanted to support me. Some of them might not have ever even read it, right? But they wanted to support my story. And so I think that's what we need to reframe a little bit with the marketing. Yes, it involves all these different pieces, but it's bottom line, it is the story you tell about your story.
Okay, that's interesting. I'm honestly gonna think about it. I'm gonna think about it, because it is the one thing, at least for me, that most indie authors I know struggle with the most. And look, traditional authors I know also struggle with it, because they may sell more initially. Well, there's orders. I mean, the book consignment thing, we're not going to get into that problem. But and this has actually been the biggest disappointment of traditional authors I know in the last 10 years, is that they can't rely on a publisher, unless you're one of 4 people, and it's fine, to do that marketing for you. And I think that has been the greatest disappointment of a lot of authors I know. So they either do the marketing and then they don't get the percentage, or then they go indie and do the marketing so they can get the percentage, but then can't have necessarily the widest reach, depending. I mean, there's exceptions for all of these things, but that has been, it's the one thing that we talk about the most. It's interesting when people ask me, non-writers ask me, they're like, what do you talk about when you're at writing conferences? Like, do you talk about writing? And I was like, God, we never talk about writing. We talk, I mean, cause like, that's a personal thing. And like, that's a sort of a personal conversation, but marketing, that's the thing we talk about the most. That's the thing we talk about the most. And the level, and the levers we can pull.
People who are very good at marketing, self-publishing people who are really good at marketing, who've got their newsletters, got their websites, tons of reviews, and they're still not able to make a living.
Because I think, and this is the part that I don't like, but I think that even in indie publishing, similar to traditional, I think there's that certain zeitgeist. There has to be the certain luck, time, and place, and whatever the lightning is. I think you can manufacture it to some degree, but it's not a guarantee. So even the book I'm talking about, where she was like, if I get a publisher, then I can sell it.
Yeah.
Her book came out during the pandemic. So if her book had come out in 2019 or 2021, would it have been the same? Because everybody was at home all day. And the answer is, who knows? Who knows? But it's those that luck and timing are not the same, but it's sort of a similar thing no matter how you release your book. And it's sort of the hardest thing to hear.
It's true.
Because it's like a rejection of a whole different kind.
True. It's tough. It is a tough business, no matter what route you take.
So with that, I want to congratulate you on your win. I hope that it yields whatever you want from it.
Yeah. And thank you so much for reaching out to me, for inviting me on the podcast. I've had a blast. I could have talked to you for another hour.
I really appreciate it, because your insight, I don't know. It's just, I say this like after many interviews, not all, but sometimes it's just so fascinating because I talk to writers all day, every day, but we're not all the same. And it's amazing to get different perspectives from different people. And especially you, because you're at a different phase of your career. I do talk to a lot of people who are like, they're like 50 books in, probably very cynical. But we're still here and we still love it. But I really appreciate you taking the time, and I can't wait to share this with my listeners. So thank you. This has been A Time to Thrill with me, your host, Aime Austen. If you enjoyed today's episode, I hope you'll share, rate, and leave a 5-star review on Spotify, Apple Podcasts, or wherever you listen. It will help others find and enjoy my conversations with brilliant women creators. Also, please hit the subscribe button on your podcast app. In addition to hosting this podcast, I'm an author. My latest book, His Last Mistress, is out now. Check out the 5-star reviews and get your copy before someone else spoils the twist. I'm also the author of the Nicole Long series of legal thrillers. The first 4 books in the series are now live. You can download Outcry Witness, Major Crimes, Without Consent, and The Murders Began to your e-reader right now. I'm also the author of the Casey Court series of legal thrillers. These titles are available wherever books are sold, your local library, and also an audiobook. You can follow me on Substack, Instagram, BlueSky, and even Facebook at Legal Thriller Author, or on TikTok at Social Thriller Author. Thanks for listening, and I'll be back with you soon with more great conversations.